Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? All right, every Tuesday we visit with our buddy Sean Salisbury, host of the Sean Salisbury Show, Sports Talk 790 there in Houston. Of course, former NFL quarterback, QB guru, just a font of knowledge. We love our opportunity to chat with Sean every week here. Sean, thanks for the time, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, buddy?
Man, I'm doing awesome. The Saints offense came crashing back down to earth on Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles. Erik McCoy went out at the starting center to the third play. I'm curious from a quarterback's perspective for you, if you're to lose your starting center, how much does that alter what you're trying to accomplish, especially real time in a game like that?
It's uncomfortable. Now, obviously, the position's an uncomfortable position. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. But when that happens, especially during the game, Matty, when it's, sometimes you have a week or two, to prepare, say, okay, got a week, our center's out. And you just kind of get used to not only line calls, but understanding what the backup and what he's about. But I'd contend in my career, for me, but I would contend for others that even if you had a guy like Micah Parsons, or you have a devastating pass rusher, a guy that's the interior, if you get pressure in the interior, a lot of times you say, okay, that guy's great, but we can control him. You can't chip inside. You cannot take a back and chip inside.
Right.
Yeah, you can chip outside. So there's this comfortability. You say, well, on the edge, we'll find a way to control the guy on the edge. We'll use misdirection against him. We'll use the way he runs. Like when we played Lawrence Taylor, who's a different cat on the outside, we would either run at him. You didn't want to run away from him. You ran at him. And even the pass protection, you'd chip on the way out. And we had a Pro Bowl Hall of Fame left tackle. So I actually think there's more comfort, and there's no comfort at all in it, but there's a little more comfort in knowing I can control the edges, even if it's a dominating pass rusher. Sometimes they wreck the game, but your left tackle and right tackle are pretty good. In the interior, if you got some push, and they've got a really good front seven 2 years ago, 70 sacks and hit the quarterback about 1 million more times, and then they're back at it and they will get after you. Is the interior? There's almost a tendency to get your head on the pass rush as opposed to down the field, because of no quarterback I know, whether you're a guy who scrambles east and west, or whether you're a climb guy, a pocket guy like a Brady who likes to climb, reset, and let it go. Nobody likes anybody in that around your legs. Nobody. And it's not only the pass protection, but it's line calls, even though the guy may be adept as a backup, and also just the audible checks, the voice inflection, how the ball hits your hands. I know that all seems elementary, but in a game, it isn't. There's a comfort level with a center, your starting center, especially if he's been doing a minute, that you just kind of lose during it. At least a week of preparation, you get a better idea. It's very uncomfortable because nobody likes people at their feet, regardless of if you're a guy who can scramble and has great feet, or you're just a pure pocket guy. We'd all rather have the up-the-field rush where we can manipulate the pocket than we would the interior push back in your face, because it just makes for an uncomfortable throw and there's not a lot of cleanliness to it. So I can contend that position's as important as your tackles are for a lot of different reasons.
Sean, do you think the Saints offense, which was at a record-setting pace through 2 weeks and then just completely humbled, how much of that was losing your starting center 3 games in, or 3 plays into the game, and then Jalen Carter is standing over Lucas Patrick, and that was just a horrible mismatch? How much of that is you got 2 weeks of film on the Saints now, and people maybe are figuring out what they're trying to do?
Oh, I think it's both, Matt. I do. I think that, when you got a guy who can dominate and that the pressure, like I said, that interior, when you get a interior guy who's can wreck a game. Now, how many guys have we seen do that in their career? The Reggie White could play outside or inside wreck a game. We've seen J.J. Watt at times do it. Most of the time when we think of game wrecker, we think on the the perimeter, the outside guys, or blitzing people who come and wreck it that are. Rod Woodson was one of those guys. He played corner and safety in the league, but from the slot, he could wreck it. Rondé Barber. Usually it's outside. Interior, when you get a guy like an Aaron Donald who destroys you inside, and then you got a double team. And then you got double, goes back to the chipping point. You got a double team, so you're using a 300-pound body instead of a back on his way out to chip out and still give you an outlet. And that double team inside, now with a team that's got more than one edge pass rusher, becomes a problem. But when you get in pushback, it's tough. I think that's part of it, the comfort level. But as a quarterback or as a team, that cannot be the distraction that allows you to be taken out of what you do. But it can be, and it can affect the play calling on the sideline. It can affect the quarterback's rhythm. It can affect all of it. But I also think it's tape. You know, we'd been naive to think that they could continue 40+ a game. We talked about it last week. You can't continue that level of play. And let's face facts. They weren't playing, you know, a team that they can throw 40 on a regular basis. The Philadelphia Eagles are pretty good, and you know they had let themselves down a week before. They wanted to get back into it, and they did a lot well. They threw the ball well. They ran it well. They had big plays all over the place, and Barkley got into it, Goddard got into it, and you didn't match the big plays on your side of the ball, which they've been able to get. In the opening against Dallas, how they came out and were hitting big play after big play early in the game. Even though they didn't get blown out, it just was not by any stretch of the imagination. They hung in there, and they just couldn't win the ugly game and close it out and finish it. So, but too many big plays on the defensive side for the Saints, and not enough big plays offensively. So when they get tape on you, then the adjustments come, and injuries seem to find teams. They just do, and unfortunately, when it's at that position with a guy you trust, it's very hard to replace him and then execute your offense the way you want to, and then playing in the backfield.
Sean Salisbury is our guest. I don't know how much stock you put into Pro Football Focus, but Derek Carr was. This will put some context on the Saints' day. He was the second highest graded player offensively at a 67.5. Chris Olave.
There's your answer.
Chris Olave was 90.3. Then Carr was a 67.5. Forgive me, but still, that's context on the day they had. What did you see, if you got to watch much of the Saints or highlights of it? What did you see from Derek Carr on Sunday?
It was disrupted a little. He just looked like, you know, he threw, I'm trying to think, was it a second down throw that he threw the pick?
Yeah.
It was the second down throw. Though, Matty, we've talked about this, and you know how I feel. I think he's a really good player. But in games like that, that's the one you got. That want it back. It's like a referee's apology. I'm not dogging Derek on this at all, but it's like a referee's apology and the NFL's apology after they blow a call that cost you a game, and they give you the "I'm sorry," but you don't get the win back.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's not just one play. When you do that, say I'd like to have it back and be more judicious with the football. Those are the ones that you have to be more judicious with the football, because the after effect doesn't get it done. I didn't think they were as aggressive with the football, and it just didn't seem from the get-go that the rhythm of what we saw the last 2 weeks. And now the opponent has something to do with that. So I thought, and it's not one of those you take a look back and say, oh my gosh, when are the Boo Birds coming out? They did not get sustained drives going. And when you're playing against a team like that, you're going to look, it's going to look ugly at times. And you're going to get embarrassed. You just are. And it doesn't matter who you play. At some point in time, most of the time, a series or two, you may get embarrassed. You may go 3 and out. You may throw a pick. They just couldn't overcome that. And, you know, he wants it back. And you just, in games like that against teams that will beat you, and that they were everything they did, from Barkley to Goddard to Hurts throwing the football for the most part and running it. I mean, when you look at the balance, what they hung almost 500 yards on him, It's tough to overcome. It really is. And then you get to the mode where when one thing goes wrong, what do? Is you press a little harder to try and make big plays. They just couldn't manufacture long drives and big plays throughout the game. And you ran into a Philadelphia team that, when they're doing their thing offensively, they're awfully multiple. And they've got some dogs on that team, literally from Georgia, and dogs like we talk about in football. So I just think they ran into a really good team that's got Super Bowl aspirations. They were going to come down to earth, but I didn't see anything that led me to believe the injury, but led me to believe that this team's going to go away and wilt after this. Sometimes, and I don't believe in moral victories. I never have. But sometimes when you do a few things that cost you a game, and you take their defense had a beat down. The next week usually turns out to be pretty well, and you don't let it fester. So panic, no. Disappointed, because they still had opportunities after all that. Hey, the more rushing attempts. They just couldn't get the thing going that we saw them the first 2 weeks, where everybody was on deck, everybody was making a play, the quarterback was in rhythm, and they jumped out in front so far and hammered both teams after fast starts in their first 2 games. Sunday's how football looks a lot of times, not the other way where you're hanging 40 and you're coasting because you got a 3-touchdown lead over 2 teams to start the game. But I mean, it's like they spotted them touchdowns. And Philadelphia's physical, and I thought that was part of it. And now we see what Carr does next week. Overcoming a ball you'd like to have back and not being able to generate the offense that you're used to generating at least the first 2 weeks of the season.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.